intermittently. And so these issues produce what we call pain points to the residents. Development control, conflict of uses, a church here, music there, building here, cows here, chickens here, and so forth is another pain point in terms of how do we follow the master plan. So we are looking at how can we accelerate service delivery to the residents and go back to the basics. Deliver water when it is due, have street lighting, have the traffic lights working, repair the roads. Once we have dealt with our nagging question with Zinara over the percentage of remittance to Harare. Most of the motorists in Zimbabwe are in Harare, yet the bulk of the money doesn't come back to Harare. So these are the things that we feel we need to get a handle on, and therefore we do understand when the residents are complaining about service delivery and in some cases non-availability of it all. But I want to say, in terms of water, we have had our cholera hotspots. There has been incessant rains that have come in. But over the years, when we've been in charge as the councillor, we have not had severe epidemics as we used to have because of the measures that we have implemented in areas like Glenview, Budiriro, and Glenora, and so forth. We used to, just a small amount of rain would have caused an epidemic across the city. But we've been able to have a handle, and we have seen the laying of a groundwork, and we have also been able at this time to work more closely with government on a number of issues, which started at the SADC and we're hopefully going to continue. And that working together promises to usher in a new era of development. We have some memorandum of understandings that we have signed in Bari. You could see a market sprouted very fast, which is able to accommodate 1,200 vendors, and we are building a bigger market which is going to accommodate 10,000 vendors and so forth.
Now, Mayor, I want to go back to the issue of the market that you just mentioned, but first I want to hear from the residents. In terms of percentage, what can you rate service delivery in the capital?
I think before we go to the percentage issue, when you look at over the past 5 years, service delivery has been regressing. So when you look at even the amount of refuse, the number of refuse trucks that were there probably 10 years ago, we used to have about 46 refuse trucks. Each ward having its own refuse trucks, and now as even the year progresses, even towards Vision 2025 world-class city, probably we have about less than 11 or 12 refuse trucks. And when you look at even water supply, even when you look back, probably at this time we could have having around 420 megaliters of water per day. Again, as the mayor said, it's around the 300. So in terms of self-delivery in Harare, waste collection, water supplies, among other issues, you actually see that we are regressing. If you go to Mbare hostels right now, you cannot even eat sadza, because of it's either uncollected waste or unattended sewerage beds. So in terms of percentage, we are probably around 40-30%.
That's a very dismal percentage point. Mayor, don't you agree?
Yeah, well, I agree. It's a stingy percentage. But I think what we need to look at is the symptoms that we used to have previously and the challenges that we used to have previously. Like I said earlier, whenever there was a little rain, we will have cholera, diarrhea, or diseases. Those have gone down. Whenever there was the roads, this other side of Samora Machel, one would agree with me that if you travel on the Loma Gundi road, you travel on the other roads, there is less congestion in those areas. But if you look at some of the things that are the indicators and the symptoms that we used to have, you will see an improvement in those areas. But we are not where we want to be. But I do believe that we are laying the groundwork, especially with the current budget. And once we deal with the issues. If you look at the 10-point plan that we got from the president and on what the local authorities should be doing, and you do a checklist, we are working on the ERP. I do understand we are about to contract it. We are working on the master plan. It's a process that's ongoing and will be finished very shortly. We will go to the audits, and once we get those fundamentals correct, the general evaluation role, we've done it, and once we get those baselines correct, then we are in a position to be able to take off as a city. But I certainly know when I entered City Hall in 2018, the Armageddon scenario that was there is certainly not there at the current moment.
Well, most people would not agree with that statement, considering that we have had some incessant rains over the past few days, and the flyover to Mbare coming from the Harare CBD has been an eyesore. It has really looked like a flooding area. That's not how the city is supposed to be like. Do you not have emergency services in order to go and fix that, or residents are supposed to do this themselves?
It is fixed. The problem is that people take a picture at a moment in time. When the water is dealt with, no one then goes to then take a picture when the water has been moved. The challenges we are having with our drainage is that people are putting rubbish in the drainage. Our informal sector, some are storing when there is no rain. They store their goods in there, they put rubbish, and that clogs the system and creates blockages whenever it rains. But we deal with these issues. Unfortunately, sometimes when you deal with an issue, no one then comes back to then say, this issue has been dealt with. And when we advertise that we've dealt with it, it doesn't get as much traction as the bad news.
Now, one of the reasons that has been cited for the deterioration of service delivery in the capital is the issue of corruption and nepotism. These have continued to make the news that city council workers and, your office as the mayor are involved in some very, I wouldn't want to say shady deals, but that's the word I have to use at the moment, because the money is not going where it's supposed to be going. Do you agree that corruption really has damaged how the city council operates?
Well, corruption has damaged our society in general. Wherever corruption manifests itself, it is a cancer, it is very dangerous, and it has to be dealt with decisively and effectively. And there has been a systemic collapse in relation to former ways of doing things, the currency changing, the US dollar component changing into Zim dollar, the tenders, and many other areas. We have taken steps to try and deal with that. We have had meetings with ZAC. We've looked at the loopholes. We've developed an anti-corruption policy. We've tried to create a system, and that is why I'm always underpinning the need for us to have an ERP. Once we have an enterprise resource package, we then remove the human element from many of our processes. The longer we keep the human element in many of our processes, the more difficult it's going to be for us to be able to deal with corruption. Some of these things, people need to interact with the system and less with human beings. Wherever there's human being interaction, rent-seeking behavior ensues.
Now, as residents, do you also agree that the issue of corruption has really damaged how the city council operates?
Yeah, sure. I think all of us, as we are aware, there is levels of corruption. From where we come from, you actually see that corruption have, I would say, made expensive for people to access service provision. I'll give, for an example, access to maternal health care provision in clinics, maybe probably where pregnant women or health staff demand bribes for them to be able then to then provide such a service. And sometimes people are threatened to then taken to Mbiani under. So if you're not taken to Mbiani under hospital, you need to pay a bribe. And this has been happening. But again, we need to look at that. That's the reason. Those are probably bribery at that level. But also when you look at, I always say this, and I'll continue to say this. The local authority purchased in 2017, they purchased 15 refuse trucks from a company, local company here in Zimbabwe. And those 15 refuse trucks have not yet been delivered.
That's in 2017.
That's 2017. And I think the day before yesterday, the local authority, the same local authority, is also looking for borrowing powers to purchase refuse trucks. When we had also previously bought refuse trucks and were not delivered. So when you look at that, it then creates perceptions that probably there will be some underhand dealings around such issues. So from us, from a resident's perspective, we would have envisaged a situation where, measures taken to ensure that what belongs to the local authority belongs to the local authority. Let me go ahead and say, when you read the addendum for the Pomona project, it also speaks to the issues where the local authority would then transfer equipment and even workers to Geo Pomona. That's the addendum, which probably is an agreement again, which was not even discussed. So we need to look at the root causes of this corruption, which was not even discussed in the full council meeting, without a resolution. And this is very, very important because when you look at the committees of council, they play an oversight role. When things are discussed in a chamber like this, decisions are made at that level. But when decisions are not emanating from this or the chamber, we then create room for corruption. We then create room for bleeding of council resources. So in our view, when you look at the whole things, we actually see that corruption, it has been happening, like as the mayor alluded to. But again, the moment when we do not follow processes and procedures that also underpin local governance systems, then it has got a bearing. Like as I said, the purchase of refuse trucks, that was never delivered, and no action has been taken, and no feedback has been taken, given to the people to say this is what happened. So those are some of the issues now. It then creates perceptions because because kana pasina kutorwa action, then there is something wrong. And when you look at even the issue of water privatization, which again, it has not even come from the people. I don't know if people who are in here, do they support water privatization? But such decisions continuously being made. So this has killed the local governance system. We have seen, the total collapse of so when the local governance system, which is premised on citizen participation and representative democracy, no longer functioning, then corruption then blooms and bear fruits.
Now, Mayor, you did say you took up office in 2018, but then there's this the buying of these trucks in 2017. Do you have an understanding of where they went? Where did the money go? Where did the trucks go? And why are you buying more trucks if those ones were never delivered in the first place?
What we need to do is to create a legacy issues department. There's a lot of legacy issues that affected the council. My understanding of some of those issues, they were done in the previous councils. And then we then had currency changes. And there was a difficulty in procuring the forex element. And it's a bit more complex than what meets the eye, because our importing system, we as the council pay, or at that time would pay RTGS or whatever currency was there, and then it was premised on foreign currency then being availed to the person whom we would have paid. And once that amount is not availed timeously, then obviously prices change. And we are in what we call a Mexican standoff with the supplier. Council is saying, we paid you in full. It was your job to look for your foreign currency. The supplier is saying, look, you know what was happening and what has happened in the economy. The money is there. Do you want me to refund you the value?
But Mayor, since 2017, how long does it take to sit down and have a discussion with the supplier and ask them, where did this go?
No,
Should it take years?
That's why I'm saying it's a Mexican standoff. There is money there. The supplier can tell you, this is your money which you deposited in my account. You are saying, yes, we deposited it because we wanted to get this particular trucks. I mean, what I'm saying is not rocket science. All of us know what inflation does when you are buying, and it takes a bit of time. If you give somebody, look at, for example, when there was a devaluation just recently. If you had paid in full, and then the next morning you wake up and you find that the money you used to pay for is now costing half, you then have challenges. But I think we will get to the bottom of that, and that's why I said we are going to create a legacy department to deal with legacy issues that have come abroad. What we are going to do as a council is that we are going to be working around the PPPs. If you look at the issues that we are faced with at the current moment, we need to move rapidly. We entered into a PPP for a market in Bari, and that market has already been completed, and it took less than 4 months to complete that market. When we wanted to do a market by ourselves, we have a market at Coca-Cola Corner there. It has not been finished up to now. What we must understand is that we as councillors and the residents are not in a pact to fail with the council processes. If there are best international practice and alternatives of doing things, I can assure you, if we had said we are building the Mbare market on our own, we would be discussing here now before even the foundation would not have been built. So we want to move forward. There is no shame within a city working with its local business people to develop the city. Joina City was built by a private person. Many of the things that we enjoy here in Harare were built by private participation. So we are going to increasingly work with the private actors to accelerate development. What we are going to do, we are going to do it in a manner that protects residents' interest. But if we are stuck in a situation which is not working, and somebody says, okay, for 5 years, I'll be able to buy trucks, I'll be able to take refuse, and I need a contract of 5 years, renewable, and I will do that. We will gladly enter into such an arrangement. Right now, the highways that we are traveling on are not being built by government departments. They are built by private contractors. One contractor is given a section, 100 kilometers and 150 kilometers. Another is given 200 kilometers. And they do the job, they pay. And you see the road is finished. And that is the model we are trying to adopt as council. We have not privatized water, okay? It's probably the use of the English language has got limitation. What we have done is that we've entered into a tentative agreement for the supply of smart water meters. And those smart water meters, and it is the same model that ZESA is operating under. ZESA did not privatize electricity. They simply started collecting revenue for their electricity better. We are producing water, and non-revenue water is at around 60%. We can't continue.
Now, another issue, another hot topic that has come up is, let's talk about your councillors. Some have said that the ineffectiveness of your councillors is because they lack the basic understanding to understand finance issues, accounting issues, or issues that really need them to delve deeper and solve people's problems. How do you say this councillor qualifies? Are educational qualifications mandatory for one to be appointed a councillor?
They are not mandatory. The councillor's job is not to come and be a doctor, okay? The councillor's job is not to come and be an engineer. What the councillor is required to do is to come and represent the people like they do in parliament. To say, in my ward, refuse is not being collected. In my ward, water is not coming. In my ward, the road has got potholes. In my ward, the grass has grown. Now, does that require sophisticated education?
Well,
we then employ technical staff who then come and say, okay, there should be a nurse in your clinic. There is an engineering department which does the roads. There is a water department which will produce the water. We as one gets elected, it's not like you are going into a job qualification. You are going there to represent the residents in terms of what they want. So you come in and you say, look, nechirungu chese chamataura staff kuwadi kwangu hakuna mvura. If you are able to say that, then you are able to be a councillor or an MP. We then employ people whose job it is to then provide those services from the technical skills that they would have acquired.
Now, let's talk about the issue of public toilets that are inadequate. I want to hear from the residents. These public toilets are dirty, they're unusable, and inadequate, like I did mention. And most of them really need one to pay for them, which we understand because they need upkeep. Are they enough from the residents' point of view? Do we have enough public toilets for people to use? Because that's one of the problems that causes issues like cholera or these other epidemics that we do have.
Thank you so much. When you look at the issue of public toilets, even probably when you look in the CBD, for an example, or probably in the town area, one worrying thing is that I always say this, that you see women queuing, to access toilets. And probably number one, let me first talk about the design of our toilets. So if you go to a male's toilets, it has got a urinary, which can accommodate 15 to 20 people at a time. But when you get into the women's toilet, it accommodates 3 people at a time. So actually, you can actually see that the designs for the toilet, actually, they are not probably, I would say, gender, sensitive, or trying to then to incorporate everyone. That's the first thing. So it's just the design of the toilets. And then in terms of adequate, they are not adequate at all, because when you look at especially at Market Square, I would say the size of the toilets, and even probably with the volume of traffic of the people who use the toilets, you can actually see that they are overwhelmed. And once in a while, we'll see blockages. And if you go to this is interesting. When you go to 4th Street again, there's also a deliberate, probably by workers, deliberate efforts by workers. Probably they say the toilet is not functioning and it's closed. And then people started to pay for those makeshift. I think some of them, they are at Copacabana there. So actually, because sometimes when you quiz them, they will reopen the toilets. So the toilets, they are not adequate. But also the situation has been exacerbated by some corrupt workers who then deliberately close toilets so that they can facilitate pay toilets which have been dotted around near the public toilets which are in town. So those are some of the challenges, again, as residents we have seen. But again, the toilets, they are not adequate. And also even the staff who cleans the toilet at Market Square, it's something else. It seems that those toilets are not cleaned. But if you go to 4th Street, the other one near the that bus stop, that bus terminus, far left near that wall, you can actually see that it's always clean and it's always open. So you actually see that there are some trends of either corruption and probably, that's what, but they are not adequate.
Now, I do understand that you do have your panel of other directors who are in here today who can answer to some of those questions. Yes. So now when I do ask a question and you feel you need to direct it to one of your directors, please do feel free to do so. Now we're talking about the issue of public toilets and, in the city center, what we are doing about it. Is there any director of yours who can speak to that?
Your Worship, guests and the presenters. My comment on the issue of public toilets on behalf of the Director of Works is that we do have a division that is responsible for maintaining our public toilets in terms of ensuring that they are cleaned and they are kept in a amenable state. So we take note of the comments from the residents, and obviously we're going to maximize our efforts to ensure that they are clean and they are accessible for the whole time that people are in the CBD. Our target is to ensure that our toilets are accessible from at least around 6 a.m. up to 10 p.m. when the community public utilizes our ranks and the CBD. And then on the issue of adequacy, you would find that on our capital budgets, we have plans to increase the number of toilets. And if you go back to, I think it's the advert of the borrowing powers that you saw recently in the newspapers, we have got a number of toilets that we are targeting to construct. Mainly we are targeting the CBD and there is the shopping centers in the residential areas. Obviously, our constraint is mainly on the availability of funding to meet some of those capital costs, but definitely we have got a plan this year to increase the number of toilets in the CBD as well as in the shopping centers. I thank you.
Now, while we're still talking about amenities, let's talk about the issue of housing. Residents have complained of rampant corruption. I mean, the issue of corruption keeps coming up in every department of yours, Mayor. I really do not know how that can really be addressed and fixed. But in terms of housing, there is the issue of corruption to the whole process of you getting a stand so that you can build your house. There are claims that residents on the housing waiting list have to pay a certain bribe in order to be given preference when the allocation does happen. How far true are these allegations? And what needs to be done to ensure that this whole process of getting a stand allocated to an individual is corrupt-proof and has been proven to be effective?
Yeah, I think we have had challenges around that area. I think my solution is to, like I said earlier, is to create an electronic system so that if you get on an electronic waiting list, electronic database, we are then able to effectively track who has gotten what and be able to effectively analyze the database to look at double allocations, triple allocations, or variations of names, IDs, and so forth. So the database needs a thorough review and a thorough cleaning so that we can avoid those issues of corruption in the housing waiting list. And then we need to increase the housing stock. More funding has to come. We have to build higher. We have to build smaller in terms of the yards. We have to densify. Space in Harare is finite. And unfortunately, everyone wants to come and stay in Harare.
Now, like we did mention, we are live on Facebook and we do have a live audience. Now, I have a question that has been directed to you, sir. You did talk about public toilets. People are asking, in particular, Lawrence Poperui, he is asking, what are the timelines? You say that you have timelines in order to deal with the issue of public toilets. What are the timelines? And are we looking at any modernizations of these toilets?
Yeah. On the timelines, as you have seen, we have advertised our borrowing powers. It's a process that is supposed to be done for at least 30 days. I stand to be corrected. And then it goes to Ministry of Local Government. Once the ministry is acceded to the request, then obviously we do the normal procurement process, appoint a contractor, and I would say, give or take, in the next 6 months, we should have the other new toilets coming into the stream. And then on maintenance, our budget was recently approved, and we're just awaiting the approval of the procurement plan. And we are on the market to procure materials for us to be able to start the repairs and upgrading of the existing. Unfortunately, my colleagues from City Architects are not here, but definitely they've come up with new designs to accommodate breastfeeding mothers, for example, and also to ensure that we've got ramps for the disabled to enable access for all into our toilets. And obviously, the world has changed. We've got now more ladies coming into town or into public spaces. So we have already changed the design of our toilets to ensure that we have got an equitable number of accesses as we have for both men and women. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let's go back also to another question that we do have from Facebook. This one is from Kuda Ashley Mafumo, saying, why do we have bylaws that make it an offense to litter, but those laws are not used to aid cleanliness in the city?
Yes, that's another area that we are going to be working on. We have created a special unit in our municipal police that is going to be enforcing anti-litter bylaws. There is a culture of throwing paper, there's a culture of littering, of eating while you are walking, eating while you are in public transport, peeling a banana, then dropping the peel a few steps later. In other cities, people don't eat while they are walking. They don't eat while they're in public spaces. There are designated places to eat and so forth. And certainly in other countries, you don't roast maize in the middle of town and so forth. So these are the things that we are going to be clamping down on with this special unit of the police to make sure that areas are cleaned. We are having issues with the informal sector. We are going to have a meeting with them to agree with them the streets that they can trade in and the streets that will not have vending at all, so that we have a measure and a semblance of control in terms of how our city operates. We need to have some streets where we do not permit anyone to sell anything in the pavements or anywhere, and then other streets where we can agree after consultations with the informal sector and the residents group, where we can allow them to be able to do the selling in addition to the designated areas, so that we bring sanity to the city.
I mean, we do have a residents representative here. What the mayor is essentially saying is that there needs to be a plan to relocate everyone who has been selling things within the CBD to somewhere different. As the residents, do you think that this is going to be effective, considering we have heard this before and we're still facing the same challenge now?
Thank you so much. So I think one challenge we have seen is the lack of markets. So lack of markets where people can then be able to do their trading, and also on the other hand, the informal sector, we still use bylaws which are also, not also, speaking to our context. To our view, the informal sector it's money for the local authority. Even if you go to Joburg right now, there are people who sell from the streets, but also it's in an organized fashion where probably there's a market where they can be able to sell. So what I'm trying to put across here is that I think we need to realize that this is revenue. But what have been happening, it has been these traders have been viewed probably as filth, and the local authority probably spends more in enforcing rather than in constructing markets. So it's very, very important that also there is that need to ensure that more resources are channeled towards building the markets in areas where these people can then be allowed to do their work. Again, we don't promote everyone like we don't promote. But again, what I'm trying to put across is when spaces are provided for, you actually see things happening. But again, over time, to those who have been in Harare for a long time, if you go to near Greenwood Park there, it was a people's market. It was owned by the city of Harare, but it was sold in a way which we did not know what happened. And now it's a private area. So you when you look at that, because some of the things which would have avoided in the past, those are because we have failed to plan, and we have failed to realize that some of the plans which were in place long before, the plans, if we would have implemented such plans, we could not have problems what we are having at the moment.
But what I said, we are going to, not all of them will be out of the CBD. I said we are going to start by designating certain streets that they can be informal traders, and then certain streets that we will not accept informal trading.
Mayor, do you have a director who is in charge of that particular development within the CBD, so that they can perhaps tell us where they are in their department in regards to that?
Yes, we do have a director, but I'm not seeing them here.
Oh, he's right there.
Oh, he's here.
Oh. Yes, you can come in, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. We do have designated sites for vending within the CBD and in areas that are outside the CBD. You may want to know that when we did the registration of vendors sometime last year, we came up with over 200,000 vendors within the city of Harare. And it is a mammoth task to plan for that number of vendors within the city. As you are aware, because of the nature of our economy, nearly everyone who was employed in the industries is now into vending. Hence, this large number of vendors that we have within the CBD. And quite a big number of the vendors that we have, or traders that we have within the CBD that we registered, they are coming from areas like Doboshawa, they are coming from areas like outside Harare. With quite a big number of these people, they are coming from areas which are outside Harare. But that is with me, the city of Harare, we've come up with vending, we've come up with sites for traders, we've come up with sites for vending. But what is lacking at the present is the buildings, the superstructure, and the infrastructure for vending. Because to accommodate the number of vendors that I've mentioned, you would need to go up. We have got plans to go up at the Glenview 80 complex, we have got plans to go up at Umpeza Namo, we've got plans to go up in other various vending sites that we have, that vending sites and trading sites that we have identified, so that we are able to accommodate this big number of traders that we registered. But the funding for such infrastructure has not been forthcoming. It's, we have gone for partnerships with the private sector, for partnerships with the Ministry of SMEs, but we have not been able to attract enough funding so that we build structures to accommodate all the vendors. We also have plans where we can accommodate vending within the CBD in certain streets at certain, during certain days of the week. We do have such plans so that we are able to accommodate trading and vending within the CBD. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Like I did mention, apart from our Facebook audience, we do have a live audience here at Town Hall. Like, to all ladies and gentlemen in the audience, if you do have a question you would like to address to either the mayor, the residents association, or even the directors that are with us in the room, please feel free to raise your hand and we will come to you so that you can ask your question and it can be answered by anyone who can do that. In the meantime, oh yes, we do have a question right over there, so you can ask.
Thank you. I've got two quick questions here. The first one is to do with the vendors. Since you've got designated areas where vendors can do their work, can you summarily tell us how much revenue you have collected, say, in the past 1 year, and what mode of collection do you use in terms of making sure that we use that revenue also? Then secondly, there's this issue to do with mayor about government, what they call special projects. I understand that was a very, very big issue around the Geopomona. I remember by then, Mayor, you were also in council. Are you consulted? Is the council consulted for government to decide what we call a government special project? And what is the input from council? And to what extent does it affect council when it comes to decision-making around the funding of such a particular project?
Now, those two questions that have been posed, Mayor, do you want to answer to those, or you're going to direct them to one of your directors as well?
The first one on the money, I think I'll direct to somebody in the know. The second one is it's about special project. I think, let's be clear, there are certain things that can be done better if we work with the private sector. I do understand that initially the dump site, what is the Pomona dump site, was an issue of contestation even by myself. But if you go there right now, I don't know how many of you have visited Pomona. It's my word. The place is clean. The place has no smell. The place has been done effectively. And if you remember, we as the residents or as the city council at that time said we will not pay. And the payment was done from the central fiscus. Now, and they've sorted the place out. And the residents, we did not get to pay. We've got another special vehicle that we did for the market. In about 4 months, we had finished a market. Now, that is a model that seems to be working. It might have issues in itself, but those are issues that we can deal with. If it's an issue of pricing, we sit down and we deal with that issue of pricing. If it is the issue of certain efficiencies, we sit down with those certain inefficiencies. But going forward, the way I see the world moving, with roads, toll roads, and so forth, central government and ourselves, we are going to increasingly partner with the private sector to deal with these issues. Someone asked about the timeline of toilets. And I myself was thinking that if we were to do a build, operate, transfer mechanism for those toilets, we wouldn't be talking about a 3 months timeline or 6 months timeline. The moment we say to somebody, okay, design the toilet, build a modern design, we are giving you 3 months, you're going to operate it for 2 years or 3 years, a good toilet will be built within a very short period of time. So we have got to make the residents understand and remodel how we do things for the convenience of our residents. You can't not wait for the antiquated processes of council where we have to go through the PRAS and so forth. And at the end of the day, even when we go through that PRAS system, we end up buying $9,000 computers. So it does not, to me, make sense to keep going on that model. The model that allows for private sector playing, if the residents want to us to manage that process, we can discuss so that we look at how to take care of the interests of the residents. But the way I see it, we are going to increasingly call on the private sector to assist us to deal with our pain points.
Another question that did come up is you are collecting, or there is money that is being collected from vendors within the spaces that have been designated to them. What is that money being used for? Director, if you could answer that.
Hello, thank you for the question. I think the money that we receive from vendors, we plow back into the markets, etc. It's a kind of ring-fenced account. What we accrue, we give back to improve the markets and so on and so forth. Yeah. That's how we use the money.
How much has been collected so far, and how much have you given back, like you're saying?
Unfortunately, I had not been prepared for that question. You know, we've got over 200 revenue lines. If you really want to know the figures, we can go into the system and we'll give you the figures here.
Oh, hopefully you are answered. Okay, not a clear answer, but like you did mention, if you want figures, yes?
Unfortunately, my friend here, just seated next to me, says he hasn't seen any improvements in terms of the markets you are talking about. But my question directed to the mayor of the city: to what extent, Mayor, is the city of Harare in control of the affairs of the city of Harare? Is it the city of Harare in control of itself, or is now the central government, even in terms of decisions that affect your revenue collection?
Mayor, you can answer that.
Yeah, so we are in control. We do make resolutions. The council is an institution of record. You are in control of the areas that are defined by the Act and your capacities as resolution. There's always a conflict of control, like in any situation in terms of the tiers of government. That's an issue where there are certain overlaps and certain decision-making that needs to be done. But in the by and large, we want more control. There are certain issues that we would want to have more control on. Firstly, the issue of road vehicle licenses. Zinara, we used to control that 100%, would like to get that back. The health sector would like to get that back. And a number of other decision points, which electricity, remember we used to own our own power station and it was taken. We would want to have that control back at the City Council to improve service delivery. So it's a continuous, it's in a continuous state of flux. There are other areas where we have firm control, other areas where we would want to get back control for the interests of the residents. So I would say it's a mix, it's a zebra system.
I want to bring it back again to the audience. If there is anyone with another question, yes, we have another question there and another one there. We'll take them both, and then whoever needs to answer will answer. We'll start with you, sir.
Thank you. It's good, Mayor, that you have mentioned that you are willing to offset some of the council operations to private players. But I'm also coming in with the issue of devolution in terms of managing the community assets and community welfare. How far are you from decentralizing operations of the city of Harare? I'll give you, for an example, I come from an area where residents have taken ownership of certain projects. And as I speak now, we have constructed a bus stop and bus stop shelters for the council. We are doing a waste separation center for the council. We have renovated the local clinic for the council. And I'm sure you can identify such guinea pig stations within Harare where residents can take ownership of whatever is in their hands. And I believe you also have a resolution for districts, to certain districts to retain a certain percentage of the money that is collected in terms of rates. And that resolution was only implemented maybe a few months and was stopped. But I think it's a very effective way of managing community affairs where the people take ownership of what concerns them within the societies. So my question is, are you in a position to let go some of the issues? And I believe they are better governed by communities. Because what I'm talking about is $20,000 that was put into the hands of my residents association committee by the residents. But it was able to do much more than what people who are receiving billions are failing to do. So is that not a possible avenue for you to address some of the issues that are bedeviling your council?
Now, Mayor, before you do answer, we did have another question right here.
Okay, thank you. With your indulgence, I'm Rumbita Kawira with the Conservation Conversation, and I come from a conservation background, Your Worship. And when we're looking at our ecosystem, the waste management issue is a big issue to our ecosystem. We've got the wetlands, which is a big issue to our ecosystem. And Zimbabwe this year is going to be hosting the biggest wetlands convention, COP15, in July. And as Zimbabwe, we do have these wetlands that are designated wetlands and that are of international importance. But I don't think we've been really taking care of our wetlands the way that we really should be. And that now trickles down to the entire ecosystem. Even the flash flooding that we're actually seeing in the cities also culminates from how we're also taking care of our wetlands. One, there's a lot of construction happening there. There's a lot of waste dumping there. You see a don't dump waste sign here, and there's a whole dump next to that sign. That is a challenge with the citizens themselves, yes, but also the issue of enforcement. But there's also that construction situation that is happening with the wetlands where it's really not designated. We wake up seeing demolitions then happening. Where has the city council been when everybody has started their foundations, has been doing all this until the building has been built with these large dural walls. And then that person's life is brought down but you've been seeing them doing all this all along. Is there a way that there could be better management of the housing situation, managing our wetlands, especially as Zimbabwe is hosting this big convention, and then coming down to the waste management situation where you will walk in town and it's difficult to find bins. There are some streets where you will find some bins, but it's difficult even when you say it's someone who's eating along the street. If there were bins that were also managed well, they could also throw their litter away. There are challenges in that specific area and in the dumps. What are you doing as the city council to also educate the communities even about separating waste at source within their homes to ensure that we can also get into this recycling where the other gentleman was talking about the waste separation, and we can start recycling, which could also assist with waste management. I think those are some of the 3 key areas I just wanted to look into.
Well, thank you. Those questions that have been posed to you, Your Worship, if you want to answer them, if you want to direct them to someone, please feel free to do so.
Okay, I think we'll direct for some who feels they can answer them, they can do so. But I think the devolution thing is a no-brainer. We want to cooperate with societies. We'll be in a position to enter memorandum of understanding so that if a community has got the capacity and the willingness to work on certain areas like bus stops and other areas that can improve the society, we are always open to that, including even if you are willing to buy a compactor, a tipper truck, anything, rehabilitate the community hall, the swimming pool, anything that people feel they are able to work as a community, we are willing to enter into such processes. We are going to work towards that retention fund again, because most of the district offices have now gotten into a situation of disrepair. I know Highlands, which is one of our highest earners in terms of rates, the place is an eyesore and it's difficult to work. But if we had a retention fund, we should then be able to work on the things that are required. I appreciate the issue of wetlands. We are committed to the Ramsar sites. We are, I think, the planner will also argument what I'm talking about. We are very committed, and we are looking forward to hosting and also protecting our wetlands. What you must understand, there's a contradiction in terms in that we have a constitution that is given rights even to a person who is doing an illegal thing. Even if someone is illegally building, you just don't wake up and say, hey, you are an illegal person, and you start dealing with them. There are processes that we follow, notices we have to give, and court orders that we have to obtain, and that gives people time. Now people can build very fast. And then also we have not defined a house. The Constitution says if someone has got a house built, you cannot demolish without a court order. Now, a person can build a 2-roomed cottage within one weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it's finished. And start living there. It is now a house in terms of the law. And you have to go to court, and it will take maybe a year or 2 years to try and deal with that situation. In the meantime, they would have obtained an existence at that place and become part of the ecosystem. So we need to get together as a society to be able to see how we can deal with these illegalities. But we have to protect our wetlands, and I don't know, the Director of Planning.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Worship. On the issue of conservation of wetlands, we are finalizing the preparation of the Harare Master Plan. And we have a chapter or a thematic area that is dealing with the issue of the environment and conservation of the environment. We have carried out thorough studies which have identified all areas that need to be conserved. And we have proceeded to come up with the proposals on how we are going to handle conservation of such areas, and maybe how we are going to handle the sustainable development or use of such areas. And I'm happy to announce that the conservation societies in Harare, Wetland Trust, Monavale Conservation Society, Dorothy and team, they have been very, very active in the preparation of the master plan. They've been very, very active. They've been attending all our stakeholders' meetings, and they've been coming up with the proposals that deal with the conservation of all wetlands within the city. And the proposals that are going to be contained in the master plan, they're actually coming from you. They are coming from the city, they are coming from stakeholders, or they are coming from all those who are into conservation of the environment. Thank you very much. We won't be found wanting when the conference happens. Did you say next year? We won't be found wanting. Thank you very much.
Well, the conference is actually this year.
It's this year.
In July.
In
yes.
July.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Thank you.
On that matter of wetlands, could you clarify whether there is something that is now called state land and something that is now called council land? And we find most of the violations of the wetlands is on what is called state land. And just recently in Queenington, Greystone Park, we had an invasion of a wetland. And it was through this clandestine operation of something called state land, which in the end did not mean what was being said. It was an individual trying to do their personal work. Is there a way we can erase that confusion between state land and council land so that we can preserve these wetlands? Because most of the wetlands, especially in northern Harare, have been defaced, have been mutilated through that system where there is a difference between state land and council land.
Okay, thank you very much. We have wetlands which are on private land or which are privately owned. We also have wetlands which are on state land and wetlands which are council owned. The opinion has been that where we have state wetlands which is privately owned, it would be ideal to compulsorily acquire or to buy such wetland so that it becomes council land or state land so that it becomes much easier to manage. But what I can say is that all bylaws pertaining to the conservation of wetlands are the same whether on private land, on state land, or on council land. The enforcement is the same or should be the same.
Okay, hopefully the gentleman and the lady in green have all been answered. Another question? Okay. If you could just give her so that she clarifies once again.
Just the issue of bins, like we do expect the citizens to play their part, but we would also expect you to play a part in ensuring that there is infrastructure available for citizens to be able to throw away their litter.
Yeah, okay. What we will do is there are bylaws that require businesses operating in the CBD to have bins that are accessible to the public, and we are going to be enforcing that bylaw so that there are different colored bins at every business premise, so that people don't have to be throwing litter all over. But we want to discourage people from eating. Well, unless you have a medical condition, there is no reason why you should walk peeling your groundnuts and eating your mazondo or assortment of maize cobs while you are walking in the city center. I mean, it's just Zimbabweans sometimes are funny. When they go to other countries, they are very exemplary citizens. The moment they cross back into Zimbabwe, they let loose. They no longer follow common rules of courtesy. We just need to have a way of behaving in the CBD, a cultural mindset that states that the CBD is not where you just come to do, any kind of business. We just need to have that attitudinal change, and also we as a city council provide the facilities that require. But this business of roasting, cooking mazondos in the middle of the street, roasting maize cobs, and so forth, has and must stop.
Now, another question there, but before we get to that, just a quick one. There was a question that was asked in regards to how much revenue is being collected from the 200,000 vendors that are apparently in the CBD. I am made to understand that the finance director does have the figures for us now.
Thank you. I do have the figures now. For 2024, during the ZWL era, we accrued. In fact, I must make a difference here between accrual, because we bill in advance, and the actual collections. What we accrued or what we billed, markets, we had 2.7 billion, US 900,000, and ZWG ZIG 5.7. But I must emphasize, this was just an accrual.
That's 5.7 million, billion, or thousand?
ZIG million, 922,000, and ZWL 2.7 billion. Okay. And I must hasten to say, on these billed amounts, our collection efficiency or rate hovers around 25%.
So what was the actual figure that then was
We can calculate from these figures now, yeah.
Okay, I was hoping you would do that for us since you are the finance director, but it is still okay. Conversation has another question for us. Now we are getting to wind down since our time has moved, so we're just going to try to make these questions quick and straight to the point. And our responses, can you just also try to make it just as quick? We have another question right there.
Good afternoon. Mine is more of a comment more than a question. Why don't the council have, instead of a top-to-bottom approach, have a bottom-to-top approach? Because we need to educate our society. We have a lot of schools, and schools are a better way of having to disseminate information to society at a much larger and efficient scale. Because if we start with the young ones, we will have a better future in terms of cleanliness and knowing how to address issues on protection of environment and littering and all that. So I think it's also best if you can have a program that looks at having to work with schools on educating the communities and how best they can address issues, some of these issues that we are facing today, because these they arose from a long time ago, and they keep on, because it now becomes a habit and it becomes a culture. So we can stem it up, we can nip it in the bud at an earlier age by educating our young ones, and it keeps on going. And we have a program that can be ongoing with partners with universities and colleges and schools. That's all.
Well, thank you for your contribution. I'm sure the mayor has duly noted that one. If there is anyone in the audience who has another question before we get to winding down and rounding up our discussion today, I'll take that silence as a quick confirmation that we are satisfied with whatever we would like to ask the mayor. Now, I want to just direct this one quickly to the residents. The burden, as he just said, lies maybe upon you as the associations that represent residents. Are you teaching residents enough to make sure that they know that they should be recycling, they should be throwing the litter in the bins? Are you doing any outreaches, or are you doing any programs to educate our school children in whatever schools that they are in? Because the burden cannot entirely lie with the council to help us clean the city. It also lies within us, the residents, to also do our part.
And thank you so much. So we do that. We do that as CAR. We, at some point in time, we also work with the local authority in terms of issues pertaining to the environment. We have been going around with the local authority together doing a climate and awareness, in different wards of Harare. I think from Borodale, they can also attest that there has been that bottom-up approach which we were talking about. I think the local authority is developing a climate and environment policy using the bottom and up approaches where community were consulted, but also on the other end, we've done awareness campaigns, again with the environmental division for the local authority, I think for the last quarter of the year, where even more than 3,000 to 5,000 people would also attend at road shows among other, but also again, from CRA, again, during this week, we also will be going to schools, doing the issues around wetlands in Mavuku. So we strongly believe that, our citizen needs information, and information is power. So what I can say is that we cannot be able to reach all constituencies probably because of limited funding, but to some extent we have been on the ground to ensure that such happens. And if those who want also to work with us to ensure that this happens, we are also, are free to do that, as we have done with the local authority, and we will continue to do that.
I was going to put you on the spot and ask when was the last time you had such an initiative, but like you just mentioned, you have one this week. I just want to understand how frequent are these campaigns and these awareness programs that you do hold, because it's not a one-time event where you just come in and say, stop doing this, but it needs to be reinforced. People need to be told constantly. How constant do you do it?
Okay, so what we have done is that we have physical platforms where people can be able to meet in communities. And we use even some other platforms. Sometimes also we invite councillors and our local leadership and people at community level. And again, we continue to pass the information around which was talking about waste management. I think in Highfields, they are thinking of an initiative of using the black soldier fly to deal with waste. So these are some of the initiatives which probably, again, we should need support from the local authority now, where people can be able to start to manage waste at that level. So we are, in fact, we are in communities every day because we've got structures across Harare. So we are in communities every day. But again, in terms of frequency and doing this work, we do it nearly every day. But also even on social media, we've tried also to sustain the engagement as we try to use social media platforms to ensure that we educate our residents, especially around the environmental and climate issues.
I would like the mayor to just respond to what he just said in terms of engaging local authority in these initiatives. Has the offices of the residents come out to you and said, we want your help, we want your indulgence in order to teach people what they should know?
Yes, they've come. We work with them closely in almost all of our programs, and we would want to even deepen the cooperation, just like with the environment people, the Residents Association, and everybody, private sector, churches, everybody. This is a community effort, even government itself. We do that in the weekly cleanup and so forth, and the other tailor-made programs. We are an open city council. Anyone's effort, everyone's effort is something that we will welcome, collaborate, and facilitate as long as it benefits the residents.
Well, and that's it. We wrap up with a strong message for everyone to do their part in order to clean the city of Harare and ensure that everyone is safe in whichever way and manner. A big thank you to everyone who has been in the audience today, and to the City Council, for City Hall actually, for indulging us and sitting down with us to have this discussion. This program has been brought to you by ZTN Prime. I'd like to thank the Mayor of Harare City, that's Jacob Mafume. I'd also like to thank Ruben Akili, Programs Officer for the combined Harare Residents Association, and mention that Gabriel Mashora, PR local government, was supposed to join us but unfortunately could not make it. We were also hoping that Precious Shumba, the director of Harare Residents Trust, would also join us, but unfortunately he also could not make it. I have been your host, Faith Nyaude. Have a good day and pleasant viewing. Thank you.